So welcome to this webinar. So we are going to talk a little bit about Scrum. So, and then we have Joey from Jamaica. That's crazy. Quick question, guys. Do you know the tool called Miro? Have you used the tool Miro? Please raise your hands. Anyone? Miro. So maybe not. Oh, okay, so Jody, yes, cool, that's good. I'm going to share a link, just a second. And this is the link to a Miro board. So here it goes. And so we are going to work a little bit on this Miro board. So, and so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to draw a little bit. So my way of teaching is drawing, right? And talking a lot, of course. That's my style. So let me share the screen. So here we are. My question, guys, can you see this? I'm sharing the screen here. Right. So I need kind of some feedback. So if you see something, please raise your hand. That is a hand sign. Oh, there is someone listening. Yes. So Jody, we have someone on the board. Cool. Okay, good. So, so quick introduction, guys. So my name is Axel Berle. I'm this guy here with the glasses. That's me. I'm a certified Scrum trainer from Scrum Alliance. And I'm also a CSD educator. So CSD educator, that means I can make specific trainings, Scrum trainings, but from the developer's perspective, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. So I'm located here in Brazil, but I used to travel the world and train the world over the world. So nowadays I'm more staying at home, my office here in Brazil, and I'm teaching using this fantastic Miro tool and Zoom, all these fantastic stuff, right? So I'm a Scrum trainer, but I am a developer from trade, right? So I've been coding 20 plus years, and my specialty is Java, and now I'm moving more to DevOps things. So, and I'm using my experience as a developer to teach Scrum from the perspective of the guys who are actually building these products using Scrum, right? Good. So this is, and I participated with Scrum Alliance in the creation of that certification path. So you have, first of all, the CSD training, then you have the advanced trainings. Hi, Lorraine, good to see you. Right, so you're on mute. So if you want to, you can all open your microphones because we are not so crowded. So that should not be a problem to have a chat. So as I was saying, so I participated in that select small group from developers and trainers in Scrum Alliance who created this certification track. So we have 2 days, that's the introduction stuff. Then we have another 2 days for the advanced and so forth. So, and you can have a look. Here we have the learning objectives, but this is, okay, this is theoretical stuff. So on the Miro board, you have some material regarding my trainings, right? So you've got a little bit of feedback, and this is how my training classes are structured. So I work a lot with the flip chart. So this is a flip chart that I was drawing my last training. This is all live stuff, so it's not canned. And so here you see a couple of these, my flip chart that I create. It's all interactive. So, and I do a lot of drawing things. So, okay, so here you see a couple of stuff that we do in the training for the CSD, for the developers. Okay, but the time that we have now, I want to give you an introduction, general introduction to Scrum and the 3 roles and the 3 certifications. So on one hand, we have the Scrum Master thing, right? So we have the CSM training and we have the developers thing, and then we have product owner. So how does it all come together? So that's a little bit the topic, right? So I want to give you a big picture of the whole thing and how you then as a developer can participate in a Scrum team. Okay, but let's get started then. All right. So my question was, and the thing is, we are a small bunch here, so I wanted to, if we are a larger crowd, it's always fun to see what you're thinking. So to post your ideas. My question is, what is Scrum about? What is the objective of Scrum? Someone would like to share a thought with me. What's Scrum? Why do we need Scrum? What's Scrum about? Any idea? Someone who would like to share? Maybe Lorraine. Why do we have Scrum? What's the purpose of Scrum?
So thanks for calling me out. So from my perspective, Scrum is about helping streamline the process of development. That's the simplest way I could kind of think to explain it.
Yeah. But if you look from the perspective of a company, right? Why should a company want to have then a Scrum? So the ultimate purpose, if you like, right? So the ultimate purpose, you say, are you a developer, Lorraine?
I am not.
You are not?
No.
What's your current position? What's your field? Tell a little bit about your background so I understand your perspective.
Oh, my field is totally different than anybody's. I'm actually a sales consultant for a retirement company, and we work with different we work with Yardi and different programs in order to streamline our processes and make things more efficient in terms of our client interactions.
All right. Okay, interesting. Good.
Different.
All right. So let's jump here. But what you were saying was interesting. It's about development. But the thing is, development, what's the purpose of development, right? So if you go a little further, basically what Scrum is all about is building products, right? So and how does that look like from the perspective of developers? So we have, and if we talk about Scrum, the notion of the team is really important. So we start having a team, right? Let's say this is our Scrum team, right? A team. So from the perspective of an organization, we don't have just teams for the fun of having them, but we have a clear purpose here. So the purpose of a Scrum team is to develop, as you said, develop products, right? So this is really the purpose. And the thing is, it's not just any kind of product. The thing is, we are creating, the focus of Scrum is to create solutions to some problem. As a product is a solution to a product, to a problem that we have. And you can even consider a service as a product. We are developing a new kind of service, right? So anyway, this is the idea of a Scrum team. We have a Scrum team because we need to develop something. And this is a central thing of a Scrum team. A Scrum team is different from a traditional team. And one of the big things is when we're talking about developing solutions, it's actually creating new things. It's very heavy on the idea of innovation, of creating new stuff. And this is what it makes it difficult if you compare this to traditional management, to traditional development of products, right? So from the theory, we say that when we're creating new things, it's not really plannable. That's our problem. You cannot really plan success from the beginning. The type of products that we develop, we're talking about digital products, right? Internet products. These are things that have not been done. And we call these, the domain that we are working is the domain of complexity. So we are here in the country of complexity. And the kind of teams that we want, that we need for this, are self-managed teams. So we have the notion of self-management, right? which is a core element of these Scrum teams. All right, so let's have a look then. What is the secret of these Scrum teams? And for me to teach about the idea of these Scrum teams, these crazy self-managed and crazy cross-functional teams, the best way to actually explain this, if you compare this to a traditional team. So how does it work? Let's start with the notion of the traditional team. So how is this structured? The traditional team, or in traditional management, you have that person called project manager or project manager, product manager. The basic idea is that you have one person in charge, right? Let's call him the project manager, right? So that's a person that has, let's say, the authority to execute this project. And the project is represented basically by a very specific plan. So the project manager either creates this plan or is handed that plan and is accountable to a bunch of people, usually called the steering board, a committee overseeing the whole thing. So as a project manager, so you are tasked to deliver, right, the product. But the product, in the sense, is the thing that is being specified in that plan. So that's the idea, right? So the focus is delivery here, right? So we have exactly defined what we want. Project manager then, what the project manager does is assign work, right, to different specialists, right? This is actually assigning and having the authority to do that, to control these people. And they usually are called resources. Maybe you have heard this, right? These guys are the resources. Okay, the little wheels. The thing is, the kind of products that you can create like that, and what usually works quite well, are the kind of products that we call complicated stuff, right? Not usually the complex, but complicated. These are things like cars, right? Assembling, creating cars, things like bridges, constructions, right? These kind of things. So these are the things where you know from the beginning what the product, what the solution looks like. And then you can do this kind of approach. The problem is when you move into land of complexity, so when you go into that land here, that linearity doesn't exist. You cannot predict how a solution in the complex domain looks like. For example, do you know any kind of successful product in the internet? Do you know any kind of really big product that you see? Maybe Facebook, Airbnb, any of these products that has been planned. These things have not been planned. They are kind of like a result of an evolution, something that has been tried out, tinkered with, changed all the time till they became successful. So this is a different kind of beast. And the problem that we have when we talk about projects and project management and teams is that we approach building products with management tools that are not adequate for that kind of problem. So Scrum here is then a new approach for managing these kind of teams, these kind of products. So how does that look like? So let's talk about how would we turn this thing into a Scrum team? Well, the basic problem that we have here, and this is actually a systemic problem. So when you see, like, when you have a plan and you are aligning the different stages, this waterfall approach, it leads to fractioning people into specialists. And that actually means that you start building up like departments. And you see that in organizations, and that's a systemic problem, because this leads to an effects like long time to market. So when Scrum was born, they tried to come up with ways to make this time to market, to remove the waiting time. How can we really remove that in a radical way? And the idea was, well, how about we remove the separation between people that are involved in creating a product, right? How can we do that? And the idea was, well, just put all these guys into one room, right? Let's put them all together. And that was the, let's say, the radical idea when Scrum was created. So basically, they said, okay, we need someone, right, who knows what is important for the product, right? So we have one guy here. So we need someone who knows how to design something. We need someone who knows how to program stuff. We need someone who knows how to test. And then we need someone who knows how to deploy these things, database guys, all these guys, right? So, and when you put all these guys working together directly, then, well, you might say, then that's the way, that's the basic idea of Scrum that you will, so basically by creating, right, putting everybody together, you have this thing called cross-functionality. Cross-functional means all the skills are present. We don't have to wait. If we have all the guys who know what to do, what is needed to create a product, we put them all together, well, then we don't have to wait because we are in the room. So, and the idea is also, well, this sounds, how can we organize that? How can we put these guys into a way to work? And the idea is they have to figure it out. We cannot predict what the best way is for them to work together. So, and this is what we call then this self-management, right? Self-management. So, and this is the idea. So we want to get the most out of people, the most of their creativity. And the idea basically is that by doing so, what we actually are doing, we are creating this kind of collective brain. We want to create this one big thinking group of people working together. So, and now we basically created, well, I think I've lost my focus. Just check here, please, focus on me. My camera has a problem. Anyway, so I'm a bit without focus. Anyway, so having now this self-managed group, you might think, well, then we are kind of like chaotic. Is this chaos? Actually, so when we're talking about Scrum gives us a minimum of structure. Scrum says we need someone who says what is important, makes product-related decisions, right? Anyone knows what's the name of that role in Scrum? The person accountable for taking product decisions. Who is that? So we have one role. So that's the product owner. So the product owner, that's one person, one accountability that we have. Then we have someone who helps the brain to think together, right? To keep the whole balance for self-organization. Anyone knows who's that? Any idea? That's the Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master keeps the whole thing into balance. And then we have, of course, our developers. These are the guys who know how to actually build the product, right? These are the developers. And in Scrum, everybody who is making the hands dirty with a product, they are called developers. So that's one collective role, developers. So this is what you have in a Scrum team, right? So to understand how you can make a team tick, with these things, with this chaos, and with this minimal structure? Well, we have the Scrum framework. So framework gives us like the minimal structure. It's a Scrum framework that says you have these and these meetings, you have these and these roles, right? And you have to make this work somehow. That's a little bit, it sounds a little bit crazy. So, so Scrum Alliance created 3 trainings, 3 certifications based on that concept. So we have the certification for the Scrum Master, the Certified Scrum Master. This is one of these certifications of the trainings. So that's one track. So we are not talking about this today, right? So we have, so if you want to understand how you lead in terms of the product, we're talking the product owner, right? And now we have the challenge of the developer. So how can you make these guys work together, right? That's actually a challenge, right? Okay, let's talk a little bit now about how, well, what is actually the challenge? What's the problem? And I'd like to go a little bit deeper than regarding the developers. So maybe a quick brainstorming, maybe we can just shout out, where do you see the challenges for the developers, the product developers? Anyone? What's so difficult for developers here? Where do we have the challenges? Do you think it's easy being a developer and working in such an environment, in such a crazy environment? Any idea? Maybe a quick question. Which of you guys is a developer? Is there a programmer among you guys? Let's see if let's have a look at the chat. You are shy, I see. So any developers? Okay, finding what to develop. Yes, so communication, that's definitely one point. So I'm going to identify this here. So one of the things that we have to learn is collaboration and the team dynamics. This is one of the challenges that we have. What else, guys? Any other challenge? That's all, or are there other challenges? Let me illustrate the problem a little bit. Let me focus, right? So how does Scrum work? Let's talk a bit about the mechanics. So what you will learn in these training courses, first of all, how Scrum, the mechanics, how the events works. And basically what you have, in a nutshell, you have this one high-level plan. This is high-level long-term plan, right? This is about what is necessary for the product, what we know for the time being that we have, what we have to develop. And we have this one guy, right? Our product owner, right? And that's the guy who is managing that list. It's a list. It's a wish list, right? So then what we have a bunch of guys working, actually building products, right? They know how to turn these things into really valuable things, right? So these are the guys who know how to turn items on that wish list into things that work. And it sounds simple, but when we say they know how to turn things into valuable things, we mean it literally. So when we take something from that list, from that wish list, so we deliver something that, well, the users, the clients, the one who's consuming that product could use really, right? So it should be something that really runs, if you like. So, and now let's zoom into the actual problem, one of the challenges. So we have this plan, right? We call it the product backlog. So we work in cycles. We work in cycles. So, and we have this high-level plan, right? So if we draw this plan again here, and this is a plan to achieve a product goal. That's what we want to achieve with it, right? And we don't do this in one go. We do this in cycles. So we're working in cycles, right? And each cycle, we deliver a small something, right? A small version of the product. And the thing is that it grows. The approach that Scrum makes is that we don't deliver components. No, we deliver a small version, then we grow it a little bit more, then we grow it a little bit more, and then we grow it a little bit more. So you always have one current version of your product. It's like putting layers of functionality on top of each other. So let's have a look. So let's try to understand the technical challenges. So we have this guy, right, the product owner, and we always start by selecting things, right, that we are going to work on during one cycle. And we create a plan for that, right? So we have our little plan to work on. And then these guys, they have to figure out how to do this and to deliver something in a short period of time. It might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, and it should be something that's actually working. So, do you see the challenge? What is difficult here? Why is that so difficult? What do you think? What makes this difficult? Any ideas? I will let you think a bit. So we have some challenges here. Let me elaborate a little bit. So you already identified, well, we have, of course, we will have new challenges because we are not in a team where you have a boss telling people how to do, exactly what to do, when to do that. So the team as a whole has to figure this out. Of course, we have a lot of more challenges, right? But then, let me illustrate this. So what people often think, oh, we have this nice little list and it says exactly what we do, but that's actually an illusion. So this nice list is actually much more something like that. Let me show you this. It looks a little bit like that. You know what that is? Any ideas? What does that represent? That's actually an iceberg. So that nice and shiny list that looks like a shiny, nice list is actually something much, much more fuzzy, much more chaotic. So we have our product owner. That's the guy who's actually managing that list. So, and now imagine we have, these are wishes. It's a wish list. So we have this one big wish, we have another wish, these chunks of functionality, chunks of features, of wishes that we have for our product. We have the problem that we have, right? If you look at our team, right? They have, you know, this small bucket. You know what that bucket is? It's the capacity that the team has for each cycle. So now imagine you have this big block of stuff. Do you think it fits into that bucket? Do you think? Right? Usually it doesn't fit, right? So challenge number one. So the team has to figure out how to make big things small. And this is what splitting, right? Splitting things. And we need different techniques. That's something new that we have to learn. This is really part of our agile toolkit that we need. We need to have this thinking, how do we make these big things small? And there is usually a trap that we fall into, a pitfall. When we come from a technical background, we usually think in splitting in technical ways, right? So if we have, for example, the following structure of our product. Imagine we have a product that has different layers, right? And we have the front end layer, we have a back end layer, right? So let's say this is front end. And here we have maybe some business logic. And here we have some persistence stuff, right? We have a certain architecture for our product. So what we usually do wrong when talking about splitting is that we split it like that, right? We think, oh, let's make one thing only front end, and then we make a big chunk back end, and then a big chunk persistence. But we have to learn to do it differently. We have to learn to split it like that. It's like how we eat a hamburger. That's one of the challenges, right? So, and we have to get used to that. So people will say, oh, we can never deliver that big chunk in one iteration. This will take like a month or two. So let's just work 1 or 2 months. But this is this hard rule that we have in Scrum. We have to make things small. We have to make things fit into the time that we have, right? So we prefer to adapt scope. That's our default approach, right? Then let me see if you get the next challenge. So remember when we said, so the next challenge is a growing product. So when we talk about building a product, that's actually not a good word. When we talk building, we think like pieces that we can put together and they somehow work. It's like a car. You disassemble a car and you can look at each piece and you put it together and you know how it works. But the kind of product that we are building, they resemble much more like a living thing. It has more like this growing characteristic. So it should look like that. So we start with a small version, right? We deliver maybe very, very small slice of functionality. And the client cannot use it really, but they can test it, they can try it out, and they can give us feedback. And then we build on top of that. So we create a new layer functionality, the next iteration, right? And then you can give it again to your clients and you can say, have a look, is it what you need? Do we have to change something? Do we have to learn something? And then you will get feedback and you do your modifications, you put another layer of functionality. And what you then deliver next is the next version, right? So it always includes the previous, right? And this is basically growth, right? So, so it goes on, right? Growing and growing. So if we see the product like that, what do you see as a challenge now? What other challenge can you see now? What do you think? If you look from a developer's perspective, every time I'm putting a piece of functionality on top of this, and this is actually, the challenge is the following. It's the testing. Right? This is the next big, really huge problem. Let's say if we develop something, that's a product, it's a version, right? People look at this and then they say, yeah, but we have to change this. And then we have to add something else. And then, right? And you take the product and you start working on top of it. How about testing? Right? Imagine you have tested the first version and then you change it. Do you agree that you have to test it all over again? And then again and again. So that it's actually a really important part that when you look at from the code perspective, you have, we need to find new ways of approaching testing. So we cannot use the same approach as we did before, where we do first the coding, then the testing, because we are changing it all the time. It's a growing product. So we need to have this testing all the time happening. And with time, the number of test cases will grow much faster than you can actually execute the tests manually. So we need new approaches. And so there is one approach called test-driven development, where you start the test at the same time as you develop. So you have a much closer communication between testers and developers. So we need new test approaches. And these are the test approaches we call test-driven, right? So these are the TDD approaches. So these are things, basic concepts that we need as in software, right? Software product development. So we need to understand more. How do we test how do we automate tests, right? So during the training, we explain how unit testing works. How do we test in the basics? How do we test on a higher level, different kinds of levels of testing? And this is fundamental. And this is much more challenging than if you go in traditional projects. If you know exactly what you're going to deliver, it's easier to plan your tests. But here you cannot really anticipate all these tests. So that's one big chunk where we as developers have to grow. If you want to do this, if you want to be able to deliver consistently with quality, right? So that also means, and this entails a couple of things. First of all, if we change, we are in the business of change, right? It's not only that we're talking about the growing product, we are talking about the consistently changing changing product. So change means we need to update and work on our code all the time. And the flexibility, what we need, is called refactoring. Refactoring means the ability to change your code base all the time so that we can incorporate the changes that we know that are necessary. But then we have another problem. How can we incorporate change that we did not anticipate? And this is another aspect, and this is architecture and design, right? So we need to change the way we structure products. Why is that? Well, it's like if you build the chassis of a car, right? You provide a structure. So if you work the traditional way, you have this fixed structure, and you're starting to put code inside that structure, and the structure is fixed. The problem is the chassis, you cannot change it, it's fixed, right? So you need a different approach that allows you to change the chassis of your car, right? So, and this means basically in terms of development, we need to be able to adapt the structure of our code in a way so that we can change. So we need to have a look, what are architectures, what are design approaches that allows us to actually do all these things, right? And you might have heard, have you heard of DevOps? DevOps, do you know what DevOps is? Right? How can we put the product that we are building into production? How can we do that? Maybe another question. If you are in software development, is it painful to make a new release? How painful are your releases? Right? Anyone? To create a new release, put something to production. Usually, if you come from a traditional background of development products, you will be you might have an operations team. Operations team is the team that actually takes your product and puts it to work. the problem is, imagine you have a change every cycle, right? And then it can happen that the process to put these things into production might be really painful, right? And so, and then you had this this movement called DevOps, right? And the idea was to bring development and operations together. And this is a concept that you need, at least part of these concepts, the idea to that you need in a Scrum team to be able to be constantly delivering things, right? So these are the concept, the items of DevOps, right? How can you, and this is what we call the principles of continuously integrating. How can you continuously integrate your work? How can you put these things into production easily, right? So these are pain points that we have to have a deeper look if you want to be able to become sustainably successful as a developer within a Scrum team, right? So so how do we do this in our teaching? How do we do this in the training class? Well, the thing is, we start explaining the basics of Scrum. So this is the CSD is actually a Scrum training. So we are going to learn from the basics. What is a Scrum team? How does Scrum work? How is the culture? How does that work? How does collaboration work in a Scrum team, right? What are the different elements that we have? What are the artifacts? What are the events? What are the roles? All that stuff we're covering. On top of that, then we look at these techniques. For example, we discuss splitting techniques. So we are going to discuss a couple of examples, right? So we're going to look a bit about on designs. We look at code, right? So we discuss how can we make sure that the code remains flexible, right? We're talking software, right? And software should be soft, easy to change. But if you look at traditional projects, you have heard maybe of these things called technical debt. When your code starts becoming rigid and it's difficult to use and change becomes painful. So we need to avoid this effect. We need to know how to deal with this technical debt. It's like having a dirty kitchen. You have to clean up that kitchen. And you always have to take care of your tools, right? So this also, we have to look at the same principle from a perspective of code. So how does a clean kitchen look like in code? So we're talking, and here we have the concept of clean code, right? What are good principles that allows us to make our code easy to maintain, right? And this is so often overlooked, right? So we're going to have an introduction at clean coding. We're looking at some basic principles. You are going to look at code in groups, right? And so you will have contact with groups. So you don't have to actually program a lot, but we're looking at this. We have to look at this. So we are practicing new collaboration techniques, right? You mentioned that collaboration is one challenge. So one of the techniques that we use is pair programming, ensemble programming, right? These are really collaboration techniques, one of the best sharing techniques, the best techniques for, also for team building. This is really a low-hanging, really important fruit, and we're going to practice it. The concept is simple, but you have to try it out. So we're going to try this out with an online tool, which allows us to program. So you can choose a programming language platform that you like. You don't have to install anything. We do this all online, right? So here you see one session where we actually did this. We're going to look at what are unit tests and how does it work. So we will have an introduction. We're going to practice a little bit, and we're going to practice the whole thing with TDD, right? So this is hands-on. It's not going really deep, but I want you to really touch code also. So and this is a training where it doesn't matter. So it's about learning the principles, right? So if you are a tester, this makes sense for you. You will be collaborating. Even if you are a tester, you don't code so much, but you need to be able to collaborate with a fellow coder, right? So we're going to take a look at the concepts of TDD. And I like to go deeper on a technique called BDD. So BDD is also test first approach. And this is how you can, this is one technique that allows you to specify and test and automate functions, functionalities, features, right? So these are the topics we are going to cover in these 2 days. So after that training, you will understand Scrum. I can guarantee you that you will know what Scrum is, what real Scrum is, right? You will know what are the challenges, what are the necessary techniques for you as a developer. So you will know where you have to improve. If you're already a developer, you know what tools you have to improve. You will know different techniques, different collaboration techniques. You will know what pair programming is. You'll be working really collaboratively with your fellow programmer in that training, and that's the idea, right? So this is a 2-day training. It covers really the basics, and in the advanced trainings we go deeper with testing techniques. We're going to go deeper, and we're doing much more code level work. So this is introductory code level work, right? And that's it, guys. So unfortunately, I cannot see you. I would love to get a little bit feedback from you guys. What do you think? Does this frighten you? So we have 10 minutes left for some Q&A, some questions, some observations. What do you think? So if you're interested, so we have this next weekend, we have one training happening. So Saturday and Sunday. Would be nice to see you then, all right? Any questions? No? No questions? All right then, guys. Thank you for your attention, and see you next time. Bye-bye, guys. You're welcome.